Ali, who's going to give his take on gaming, and of course yours will be probably slightly different, and yeah, with your background actually in gaming.
Okay guys, I'm here to talk about Ruskin, Geology, mountains, and the future of game design, innovation and research, hopefully all in 6 minutes and 40 seconds. My name is Umran. I used to work for the games industry. I left and came back to higher education to kind of innovate and experiment, and I'm glad I did. Just to start off with some facts about the games industry, by 2015 it'll be worth 90 billion. It's a massive industry. In a few years it's actually eclipsed the film and music industries. Production on some levels can span £150 million, 6-7 years. 47% of games are actually women. In some areas actually more than that. Just two case studies in particular. Grand Theft Auto made more money quicker than the last Harry Potter. World of Warcraft, an online role-playing game, made more money than the entire GDP of Zimbabwe in 2012. So actually these are massive games, massive phenomena. Next slide, move on. There's a little
I like that look, yeah, I like that. Good use
okay, just looking at the history of film in the last 110 years, you can see how it's expanded into different genres, different areas, and how significant it's been. If you look at the history of gaming, we're actually only at the start of it. 30 years, okay, so just imagine what we've achieved in 30 years, what we'll be doing in 100 years' time. We're actually still in the black and white kind of silent era in kind of gaming. For me, it actually started 30 years ago, my kind of natural love of gaming, which was quite bizarre. Started off with the love of the natural environment, lived in the inner city long site, not much access to the natural environment. There was only this thing behind a brick wall with a door, managed to get access to it one day. That's really where my passion for the natural environment started. Got into the games industry, kind of carried on, and this is where my research really comes into it now. Okay, so 30 years ago, this is the state of kind of games, natural environments and games. Very pixelated, two-dimensional, very limited interaction. Within 30 years, we've moved to a point where we've got weather systems, natural terrain, day and night life cycles. But there's a problem within that. Within that, there's only something like 20,000 people that work in the games industry, 100 to 200 kind of lead designers. The entire kind of design methodology and process is still very, very juvenile. Games are getting bigger, larger, more in depth. The problem is, how do you create these kind of large scale next generation spaces? You can't use the traditional methodology. For me, part of my research, first step was actually, how can I propose a solution to that if I don't actually know, or if I can't illustrate what's happened in the last 30 years. So I used my photography techniques and tools as a research method, combined it with looking at games and extracted what the natural environments looked at over the course of 30 years, which you'll hopefully see now. So a bit of a delay. Essentially looked at the natural environments and games over the last 30 years. The first part actually was extracting these natural environments, a lot of hacking, a lot of modding, a lot of coding, looking on servers in Japan to find kind of tools and mods, which took, as I said, 3 years of hard work. Finally managed to extract the environment in a visual form, so I could then reflect upon them, evaluate them, and collect them. And as I said, over the course of 3 years, I've managed to collect something like, I think it's 1,000 different images over 200, 300 different games. Part of that was to actually kind of look into how these environments were created and actually start to propose a future system for that, which I think it's going to move on. One of the outcomes was a virtual landscapes image database. So I had 15 gigs worth of data, how to represent that as a learning tool. I came up with this, which is an interactive database which you can start to manage and use and collect and kind of see the data. So that was one of the outcomes. The second outcome from that was, actually not an outcome, but a discovery for me. John Ruskin, the English philanthropist and environmental artist and critic, during my research I wanted to try and connect the natural environment design to something that was a bit more authentic, or something that had a meaning to it. I came across this quote and it really kind of resonated with me as a designer in terms of a completely different angle, a completely different way of thinking about it. So I thought, hang on, could I marry something like games design with something like geology, something like landscape character assessments, and come up with a new framework, a new way of kind of creating these games. Kind of experimented, kind of worked, and actually after a while I thought, well, I've got to do exactly what Ruskin recommended, which is the next slide. So I went back to nature, I went back to Placid Running, kind of climbed a few of the mountains, kind of really got back to what the environment was about, tried to reflect and collate exactly what the experience was, and then feed that back into actually creating a new environment. So I created a new game and a games engine called CryEngine. Part of that was actually taking what I'd learned in terms of reflection, taking what I'd seen in terms of the processes in geology, and actually creating a new outcome from that. Part of the process as well was looking at the kind of production side of things. So when I was collating all of this, I came up with this idea for a new tool. What if I could come up with a new tool to visually mind map all my production, all the images, the video, the annotations and audio, marry that with social media, and actually come up with a new tool. And actually I found it has resonance with fashion, catering, wedding planning. It goes outside gaming, which is a fantastic discovery. So the solution so far, I think, for me has been a new toolkit. So the first part is a visual archive of the natural environments and games of the last 30 years, a natural environment design guidebook to how to actually create these natural environments, an interactive game demonstrating the process, and actually that mind flow tool, which I found actually has resonance outside of gaming into all different areas. If I was looking at the future of gaming, just within my particular aspect of games design, actually it's involved environmental psychology, landscape aesthetics, geology, photography, and I can imagine the future would be actually completely irrelevant disciplines coming together, converging and actually feeding back into the design of natural environments. Okay, and a final kind of plug for my books, which will be reduced to free. They were $2.99, but most students are now kind of a little bit tight on money, so they are going to be reduced for free. Please download them, have a look, share them. Some of the reception's been great so far. So if you're interested in reading more about it, I've got my blog. Have a look. I've got my site where I've uploaded everything onto it, and it'd be interesting to hear about people's reflections and ideas and thoughts. Thank you.